Just to kick things off, I'd love to invite you to introduce yourself and Threads. And I know you have a few slides you'd like to share.
Yeah,
Feel free to share your screen, or I can
let's
do
do
it,
that.
whatever works for you.
Yeah, happy to. Let's do it. Sweet. I'm gonna go in presenter mode. Here. Can you
Perfect.
see a big pink thing that says Threads?
We see it, absolutely.
Awesome. I can't see anyone else's faces or anything, so let me know if there's any technical difficulties here. Great. So thank you so much for having me, Joe. Just want to go over a few slides, quickly introducing myself, introducing Threads, and then give you a quick little demo of the product. So to kick it off, my name is Rousseau Kazi. I'm the son of Bangladeshi immigrants. I went to school for math and computer science at UC Berkeley. Go Bears. Kind of a funny story. I started at Facebook when I was 20. Was there for about 6 years. It was a bit of a clerical error. I finished my internship. I had a beard back then. They thought I was much older. They were like, here's a full-time offer. I was like, what? I was supposed to get a returning internship offer. Due to that, I ended up graduating a year early and going there full-time, and kind of built my career there. Had a blast. And a couple of useless facts, because I think those are always interesting. I like playing guitar to de-stress. And in another life, I tried becoming a stand-up comic. When that didn't work out, I fell to my backup plan of becoming a tech CEO, and we'll see how that goes. Now to introduce Threads, we're on a mission to make work more inclusive. We believe the future of work is diverse and distributed. As this happens, our current tools do a poor job of giving everyone a voice and keeping them on the same page. We believe that modern teams are starting to look more like online communities. And we believe that because if you think about it, what's been diverse and distributed from day one? The internet. The tens of people having productive discussions, and that's a bit of a rarity in the workplace. So when you think about how modern teams are looking more like these communities, there are two main communication channels that these communities use. Chat, like WhatsApp, WeChat, Telegram, text, Slack, and forums. You think of Facebook groups, you think of Reddit, you think of Quora, you think of Hacker News. Chat's a great channel for the quick and the casual, and the forums are really good for the important and critical, and for these in-depth discussions. So in a simplified way, what Slack did to IRC and chat, Threads plans to do with forums. We want to make it modern, we want to make it enterprise ready, we want to make it secure and compliant, and make sure that it's scalable and built in a way that everyone can use it. So let's see what that looks like in practice. So this is Threads. Off the bat, you have something called an organization. Right? Think of this as like a virtual building, right? So this would be Coda Capital or Remo. Within them, you have these spaces, right? These are like the forums. They're kind of like meeting rooms for any topic. And within each of these spaces, you get threads. And a threads is like a meeting. You kick it off about a specific discussion. It's like an agenda, and everyone has a chance to comment, reply, and actually engage. So let's see what one of these threads look like. So we go into this thread, you see it says showcasing customer work, Rosario posted it. And off the bat, you could see who's actually a part of the discussion. You could see who's seen the thread, who's fully caught up on it, which means they've read the comments and replies. And you can see who will follow up. Now, this is probably one of our most loved features. Being able to see who will follow up gives you confidence that people actually plan to get back to your discussion. It's kind of like email flagging, but on steroids. Now, after you read the thread, you want to engage in the discussion. People can leave comments and replies. So you can see Yusuf left a comment and Rosario replied. Sammy left a comment and Rosario was able to respond to her as well. And you don't get penalized for being late. You can't really be late to a thread. Someone kicks it off, and even if I came hours later, I could still reply to Rosario and Yusuf. I could still reply to Sammy and Rosario. I can start my own comment. And just like any other meeting, a lot of these discussions reach resolution. So you're actually able to go down here and you can mark things as a decision. So now everyone gets clarity that a decision's been made. This allows people to be thoughtful, to be structured. You don't get extra points for being loud. You don't get extra points for typing quickly. You're able to have these inclusive discussions that lead to better decisions. And that's it at a high level. I'm really glad that you guys are having me here, and I'm happy and excited to answer any questions you might have. And
one thing you've said before previously is that remote work and inclusion are two sides of the same coin. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting insight. When you think about building a remote-friendly kind of culture, right? Because you might have remote offices or distributed workers, right? You start moving more towards like asynchronous platforms. You start moving more towards writing versus just meetings all the time. Now, when you think about it, you think about what are the things that remote workers kind of have trouble with? Well, like they're in a different time zone. It's hard to include them in every meeting. Oh, well, it might be harder for them to speak up because they're on a screen off to the side. So it's harder for them to actually chime in. So you start moving to more of these platforms and more of these processes to make it easier to include them. Now, if you think about it, there's a lot of people that have those same exact problems in the office, right? People who are maybe a little more introverted, people who don't feel great about yelling or interrupting you, right? People who like being a little more thoughtful versus reactive, right? So one thing that I've noticed for these companies that have really, really great processes and infrastructure to support the remote workers, they have workers that are actually in their centralized office that feel way more engaged. So I actually think that these are two sides of the same coin, that you could be a company with a large centralized team, but you still having the infrastructure and the habits of supporting remote work will probably make many more people who are a bit more silent at your company a lot happier.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I never thought about it that way. I have heard before that sometimes working at a giant company, you feel like a remote worker because you're working on a team where the people are in the next building, but you never even interact with them physically.
Yeah, no, I can't tell you the number of times I video chatted into a meeting that was across campus at Facebook. So I was like, I'm not going to spend 15 minutes walking. Like, it's fine.
Absolutely. Wanted to ask you just about the elephant in the room. How has coronavirus affected your business both internally and externally?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing externally is that we just launched and released our product months ahead of schedule, right? We were planning on opening it up later this year, and then so many things happened. People were requesting it. Some of the companies we were supporting were moving faster in their deals, and we were like, wow, there's this demand here. We don't really have the luxury of waiting anymore, right? People just need this. So the first week that we all went work from home, I went to the team and I was like, hey, I know this is crazy, but we should get this out. We should give this to people. So the team sprinted, they moved mountains in 5 days, did whatever they could, and we got it out to people. So that was probably the biggest external thing that we did. Internally, we've always had remote workers at Threads, but now all of us are distributed. And that's been really interesting and exciting, right? It really pushes our platform to the limits. One of my favorite customers on Threads, they're called Buffer, fully distributed, amazing team. They've been using Threads for more than a year. And it's cool always hearing how they used it and the slight differences they used it compared to us. And now since we're fully distributed, we're able to play with that as well. So I would say that those are the big two differences, both internally and externally.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to ask you something I'd heard you say before is that there's a perceived trade-off between inclusion and efficiency. Can you talk a little bit more about how Threads is resolving this tension?
Yeah. So one thing that you kind of realize when you think of a work team as a system is that as it grows, it gets harder to keep everyone on the same page, or as it becomes more distributed, it gets harder to keep everyone on the same page. Now, this doesn't happen intentionally and it doesn't happen maliciously. It happens because after a certain number of people, most tools just break. After 5 people, meetings become all hands, right? You only have one person talking. After 5 people, chat becomes chaotic, emails become fragmented. So what we're taught to do, in management training, you're taught to keep the room small, right? Only include the critical members, only include the people who need to be there to actually engage in the discussion. Because there's this really shitty trade-off between inclusion and efficiency, right? We don't want to exclude people, but if it's between that and getting work done, we need to get work done, right? And what means is the people that are constantly included are the people who are louder, the people that make a fuss if they're not included, maybe more senior people so you don't get fresher perspectives, right? So for me, it's what if that trade-off didn't need to be didn't have to happen, right? What if you could have these discussions that scale elegantly as more people enter the discussion? Now, when you look at it online, tens of people have discussions online on productive topics. You go to Quora, you go to Reddit, you go to Hacker News, you see everyone kind of chiming in. That's a bit of a rarity within the workplace. So for us, we're how do you kind of level that playing field? We have a saying at Threads, the difference between a good decision and a bad decision comes down to the amount of context you have when you make the decision. And it's really hard to make that full context decision when you only have a few people in the room, right? We hire so many great people, only hear from a few. And a big thing that we're trying to aim to do is how do we make it easier for you to include everyone and not have to make this trade-off between inclusion and efficiency? Does that make sense?
Excellent. Yes. Thanks for clearing that up. I'm gonna ask our audience to submit a question or two. So get going on that, people. But just real briefly, I got to ask. Tell me about your very brief stand-up career and what inspired you, and what if anything did you take from it?
Yeah, it's funny. When I was in college, it was kind of how I de-stressed, right? It's really fun being able to make people laugh and be able to go back and forth. And I'd go to these random comedy events with a fake name and try the whole thing. And I think a big thing is I think the thing I took away from it was I really just enjoy storytelling. I love being able to like think of things that bring people through this emotional journey and kind of have this big punchline delivery. And funny enough, there isn't a huge gap as much people think between like doing any type of story-based profession and running a company and recruiting and selling and creating energy, right? So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I will say stand-up comedy is a lot harder than working in tech right now. So props to anyone who can make that happen. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I heard recently a VC say that they went like as before they were advising their startups and how to do a pitch, they went to a stand-up comedian to try to get that storytelling skill set.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that one thing that we try to do at Threads a lot is look at other very different organizations and communities and see what we can learn. So from org structures, right? You look at like big organizations that already exist. What did they do? How did they think about it, right? When you think about storytelling, right? Look at screenwriters, look at comedians, look at people who have to do it in front of an audience live, right? I think there's a lot of really interesting things you can learn from these other professions as well.
Excellent. So the question that someone posed is, can you give a short demo? I think we might be running a little bit low on time for that. And I guess you kind of already gave a brief version of that.
Yeah.
But oh, here we go. We got another one. I don't know if you can see it, but
let's see. Oh yeah, the non-tech world is painting most in transition. GitLab's manifesto as async adoption as phase 3 of going remote. Are you finding that Threads has to help companies through the initial phases? Yeah, I think this is really interesting, and I just want to make sure I understand it properly. So I think that when someone goes remote for the first time, the kind of first act, in my opinion, is how do we move everything that we did in a centralized office to remote working, right? Like how do we do everything one-to-one, right? I actually think the CEO of, I believe, Automatic, the company that runs WordPress, had this great quote where they were like, the first time there was movies, the first movies were just people recording screenplays, like literally just like plays. They just recorded them and put them on movies. And they're like, that's not a movie, right? A movie is different. It's a different medium. It's a different way of thinking about it. You have to do this like larger translation map. And I think that's what's happening in phases. And I agree with that sentiment for remote work. First, everyone's just going to record screenplays and put them online. And then they're going to be like, okay, well, how do we take it to the next level in the next act, in the next phase? So yeah, I think there's a bit of kind of hand-holding initially to kind of let them know how async works. But in general, people, async is a bit of a spectrum. People have already been doing this with email. People have already been doing this with their social networking and media, right? Most things aren't meetings already. So a lot of it's just kind of helping them build that mental model.
Well, I think we're a little bit out of time here, but I just want to say thank you so much, Rousseau, for your time and for what you're doing for our remote community. We all really appreciate it.
Of course. Check us out at threads.com. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Thanks again.